What did the sushi say to the bee? What's up, bee? Imagine a world without honey. Now, imagine it without almonds, peaches, alfalfa, mint, and any other of the bee-pollinated plants that we use in our daily lives. Within this presentation, we are going to explain the history, importance, and solutions to the extinction of the honeybee that many people aren't aware of. There are two main kinds of mites that have the biggest effect on the decline in the honeybee population. These two kinds are the tracheal mite and the varroa mite, which both came within the mid-1980s. The tracheal mite came in 1984 and it lives in the breathing tubes of the honeybee, and it has the ability to kill a whole honeybee colony at once. The varroa mite, which came a couple years later, sucks the blood of the bees and can cause early death. These mites have spread to the majority of the United States and are particularly deadly in places with long and cold winters. In the winter of 2016, more than half of the honeybees in both New York and Pennsylvania had died. In the year 1989, there were approximately 3.5 million honeybee colonies in the United States, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. However, that number had fallen by about a million colonies when colony collapse disorder, or CCD, was first discovered in 2006. Within just the last 10 years, more than 40% of honeybee colonies in the United States have suffered colony collapse disorder. Within 10 years since, the number of colonies has climbed very slightly by about 100,000, but honeybee population still continues to decline and will never get back up to where it once was. Recent harsh winters that stay freezing and snowing well into the spring have a grand impact on the declining number of honeybee populations. States that experience this the most are states such as Iowa, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, as well as Montana. However, in recent years, California has been experiencing a big drought, and it has become a big problem for the honeybee population because it declines their numbers more due to the lack of rain, which means less flowers and less pollination for the bees to be doing. When treating gardening arrangements as well as flowers in bloom, honeybees tend to pick up pesticide in nectar and pollen, either leading to pesticide poison or getting into the honey, which ultimately leads back up to us because we aren't able to enjoy the honey that they make any longer.
After discussing the history of honeybee extinction, we're going to learn the importance behind it. Honeybees pollinate around 70 to 80% of our crops, which constitutes 1/3 of everything we eat, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Most importantly to some people, without honeybees, there will no longer be the beloved honey that millions of Americans use daily. Honey is great for medicinal purposes, a healthier alternative to other sugars, or just a sweeter touch to your cereal or tea in the morning. These honeybees are the only insects capable of producing honey. Without them, the whole honey industry would basically plummet. Even if people were able to produce this product without actual bees, it still would not come close to the delicious gooiness that is provided by these bees. Honey is produced by honeybees pollinating large amounts of crops. The honeybee is responsible for pollinating 50% of soybeans produced, 60% of alfalfa produced, 80% of peaches and cotton produced, and 90% of the apples, oranges, cherries, grapefruits, and tangerines, according to Roger A. Morris from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Without the necessary pollination that sometimes only bees can provide, there will be a large decrease in many crop and food products us as Americans eat on a daily basis. Some of these foods include our healthy fruits and vegetables. In an extreme case, bees are responsible for pollinating 100% of almonds that are grown, so the almonds that people love to eat would no longer be around. In general, plants that are pollinated by honeybees will suffer. Large populations of plants will face low pollination rates and will die out. If honeybees do become extinct, some plant species will soon follow. Alfalfa is a plant that is pollinated by bees and is the main diet source for cows, and without cows we'll no longer have the milk and steak that we humans truly love. With the low production of alfalfa and other crops, the cow population as well as other animal populations will slowly decline, leaving the human race in a terrible state without these meats. Honeybees are currently responsible for bringing in an annual revenue of around $15 billion from these fruits, vegetables, and other crops, according to the American Chemical Society. With a decline in the honeybee population, the amount of revenue will surely decrease. The prices for all these fruits, vegetables, and other crops will rise significantly due to the lack of these products. This would also be the same for the meat and dairy situation with the cows. Bees in general are responsible for pollinating a large amount of plants in society. Without them pollinating necessary plants, a lot of things will go downhill, including the economy we discussed, plant species, and crop production.
The importance of this issue requires a need for change. Addressing this issue illuminates the best need, and the best solution will arise from these suggestions. First of many solutions is to start planting bee-friendly flowers and flowering herbs in your garden and yard. Bees are losing habitats all around the world due to poor farming practices, pristine but flower-bearing gardens, and the destruction of native landscapes. Just by planting flowers in your garden, yard, or planter will help provide bees with a bee-friendly habitat. By avoiding chemically treating your flowers, as chemicals can leach into pollen and negatively affect bee systems. Plant plenty of the same type of bloom together. Bees like more flowers for them to pollinate. Plant things such as mint, pumpkins, sunflowers, rosemary, and honeysuckle for the best bloom. Planting these will lead to weeds in your garden. Contrary to popular belief, a garden full of these dandelions are actually a great thing. It's a haven for honeybees. Don't be nervous about letting your garden live a little bit. Some of these weeds are actually the most important food sources for native North American bees. Let it bloom first for the bees, and then before it goes to seed, pull it out and trim it back. Having as much plants in the area for the bees to pollinate will lead to a bigger bee growth and leading to a bigger beehive honey population. From these weeds, we may start using chemical and pesticides to treat your lawn and garden to make sure that your lawn looks pristine and pretty, but it's actually doing the opposite for you. The chemicals and pest treatments that you put in your lawn or garden can actually damage the honeybee systems. Treatments are damaging, and when the flowers are in full bloom, it may get into the pollen and nectar and taken back to the beehive where the honey can be affected by these, leading to it getting into us. These pesticide varieties are actually the major culprit in colony collapse disorder. Since so many Americans love the honey, it's best for us not to get pesticides in it. We want to buy local and raw honey. The honey we buy directly sends a message to beekeepers on how they should keep their bees. Keeping in mind your own personal health, try and buy local and raw honey that is from bees and that are not treated by chemicals. Local and true, raw, untreated honey is hard to find. If it's coming from a grocery store and it doesn't say the words pure and raw in the description, it is probably not the best honey for you. If the label doesn't say untreated, it probably is treated and it's not going to be the best honey, again, for you. Overall, just ignore grocery stores and go to your local farmer's market. Bees are surprisingly thirsty. Putting a small basin of fresh water outside your home can actually help this. Nobody really knows that this is true, but it's actually quite easy. If you leave out in your bird bath some water and sometimes sugar, it could be a nice little trick, and they definitely will appreciate it. Not only buying local and raw honey will help, but buying local and raw organic food from farmers can actually help too. What's true for honey generally holds true for the rest of our food. Buying local means eating seasonally as well, and buying local from a farmer that you know means you know what food is coming to you. This much is easy in the summer when the fresh fruit produce from your local farmer's market is easier in the summer to find since it's easy and fresh produce to make. Another option is to get your food from a local CSA or community supported agricultural farm. Keep in mind USDA organic certification can be expensive, and people that don't produce in high quantities may not have this certification. Many farmers don't actually produce in high quantities and don't make as much money as others. Don't let this get in the way from supporting them, and if you're worried about products, have a conversation with your farmers. The next step into doing this would be looking into becoming a beekeeper. Look up local bee association that offer classes into natural processes in your community. Beekeepers actually have a lot of fun since they understand that honeybees aren't actually out to get them. Honeybees are vegetarian. They only are interested in pollen and nectar from flowers up to 3 miles away from their hive and bringing food back for themselves and their beehive. Contrary to what the media might believe about them, They aren't actually out to sting us. When a bee lands on you, stay calm and still. They aren't actually going to hurt you, they're just trying to sniff you out. Don't stand in front of any hive openings or pathways of concentrated flowers. Bees are busy running back and forth from their hive, and if you don't get in their way, they won't be in yours. Honeybees and wasps are actually different. Honeybees die after they sting humans, but not if they sting other bees. Wasps do not. Wasps are carnivores, so they are always after your lunch meats and sodas. Honeybees, though, are vegetarians. Now knowing this situation, it might be smart for you to start sharing with individuals around you. Sharing with your community may actually be a lot of fun in many ways, and making sure that you have a voice shared about the bees. Make sure to check online for different forums and community meetings in schools and universities to jump on this opportunity. Not only can you share your voice in your community, but also let Congress know what you're thinking. Change has to happen from top down as well as from bottom up.
After discussing all the possible solutions, the best solution would be all of them combined to provide sanctuary and safety to the honeybee population. All those solutions combined would be the most cost-efficient and most effective for saving the honeybees.
The smallest amount of help can save the honeybees from extinction. If a honeybee is sick and you grab a spoon of sugar and water solution and feed them back to health, or not pulling that nasty weed out until the last day, are all steps in the right direction to save the honeybee population.
Now don't forget where this all started. Back in the mid-1980s, the tracheal mite and the varroa mite started infecting bees and harming their bodies and their hives. This only sparked the rapid decline of our honeybee population and started a chain reaction.
Crops become less pollinated, which leads to less food sources for herbivores, and in the end, the human race will suffer in loss of male variety. An extinction of one species overall declines in all others.
Now, what do bees use when they go bird watching? Binoculars.